Welcome to the 18th episode of the Honor Society, covering all things Ring of Honor, live from the No Sale Studios. I'm the Ace of the Tavern, Acefield Retro, and as joined as always by the man so filled with honor at mullet.mania, Colton. What's up, dude?
What's going on, Ace? Man, what a show we just had.
Dude, amazing show, and like we always say every week, we are getting jam-packed wrestling. When you look at the card going into the night, you're like, how are they going to fit this into 2 hours? Well, I'll tell you what, no commercials, that will do it.
Yeah, every single time, man. There's more wrestling by a long shot on a 2 hour Ring of Honor show than you'll ever see on a Monday Night Raw, and they'll probably the last like 10 years.
That is a true fact. That, I mean, honestly, like it can't be overstated. Like wrestling upon wrestling upon wrestling, and telling good stories, weaving things in. And the impressive part is these were all taped February 26th, so we're about a month away, and they still feel fresh. And I don't know. I mean, last week we talked about avoiding the spoilers, and then this week, same thing here. I didn't go in with knowing the spoilers, and that's been an active activity I've been doing on a weekly basis, just avoiding, because it makes the show so much enjoyable when you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, man, same here. Absolutely. Today was actually so this is the 4th episode. This is the first time that I actually caught a glimpse of the same crowd member where I recognized him from a previous show. There's this old timer in a Dale Earnhardt cap, which I'm a huge NASCAR and Dale Earnhardt fan. So I've just got like a laser eye for the three. Today was the second time that I saw it. I was like, oh yeah, it just kind of brought me back. Like, yeah, they definitely recorded all this on back in February, but it doesn't feel like that when you're watching it. They're doing a great job.
Yeah, and some of those things that are filmed in between, of course, we'll cover that Claudio and Eddie Kingston segment that was so beautifully done with Caprice Coleman as the interviewer. But like you said, I mean, how many hours worth of wrestling with those people sitting in? And this was the last of those tapings, and they had the energy up all night. They were loud. I know it was a small, intimate arena, but there was an energy among the arena. I know there probably was an intermission and all of that, but they all seem very happy to be there enjoying their wrestling.
Oh, it definitely seems like diehard fans only, man. They're definitely not giving away tickets to pack the Universal Studios like WCW was back in the day sometimes.
All right, let's get into the scoop and talk about the news of the week. We have 2 stories to cover. They're not huge, but we want to make sure we cover our bases when it comes to ROH. All right, guys, the scoop segment here is the news of the week. And anytime the 3 letters pop in the news, we want to bring you guys what is being talked about. And first things first, Bobby Fish, AEW and ROH alum, spoke about liking what they're doing in ROH and liking what Tony Khan's vision has been. And he's been pretty critical of the Sinclair version. And he was talking about it in an interview with PW Mania. And he talked about how important the ROH brand was to him. So one of the quotes definitely, which I thought was interesting, I mean, Bobby Fish's tenure with AEW ended a little poorly, especially with the feud with CM Punk, and not feud on screen, but feud off screen. And Ring of Honor is definitely a place that will always hold a special place in my heart. This is what Bobby Fish is saying. And the things that I love about the industry, that's the place where Kyle and I got to grow as a team. I'd say that was probably the most important part of my maturing process when it came to becoming a professional wrestler, was the time that Kyle and I started doing Red Dragon. That's what I think really formed who I'd become as a performer. He continued, Ring of Honor would always be someplace that would interest me. I love the fresh coat of paint that it seems to have been given. And he said, I like to see different guys being given the opportunity. Some of the same flavors, but some of the old flavor, a nice little mix. And I think he's absolutely right. I mean, what do you think about what Bobby Fish had to say about this?
Dude, I think he hit the nail on the head. And it's really refreshing for me to hear, a Ring of Honor alum feel that way. It's like, I mean, I think that, I have a lot of people I've been talking to been really happy with the product, but, I've never heard of a wrestler who has anything, they might be critical of the Sinclair era, but as far as like their time that they personally spent and what they got out of their time in ROH, everybody holds it with a very high regard and kind of a sacred place in the world of wrestling. So yeah, I think it's super encouraging, and especially for a lot of the young talent that's coming in, kind of cutting their teeth in this new era of ROH. I think it's a really resounding review coming from Bobby Fish, and it should give everybody who's on this show week to week a lot of encouragement.
Do you see Bobby Fish having a place on this roster? I mean, Kyle O'Reilly right now is hurt. He had that neck fusion surgery, and who knows what the timetable is, but with or without Red Dragon, do you think Bobby Fish has a spot in this roster?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, I love Red Dragon as much as the next guy, but Bobby Fish is a great in ring worker, and I think he does well as a singles. And I mean, honestly, I can't think of a better place for him to have a spot right now anywhere in wrestling than on ROH.
Yeah, I would love to see it too. And I know, again, like we talked about, the sort of the sparring with words back and forth with AEW, most specifically Punk and kicking out of the GTS at whatever 3 2/4 and all of that stuff. But either way, I mean, I would like to see Bobby Fish mend fences and get back with AEW, and then specifically be under the ROH umbrella. But we also had someone else who was in action tonight, probably match of the night. Chris Daniels was speaking about just in general, what it felt like working under the Sinclair banner, and also now with Tony Khan at the helm, and the difference between them. And this was an interview with Muscle Man Malcolm, and he said he really felt like ROH had a ceiling under the Sinclair broadcasting. And he said Tony has set a wider set of resources for ROH's benefit. Even when we were doing stuff with Sinclair, I felt there was a ceiling to how far we could go. I don't think Tony has that ceiling in place. He continued talking about Tony's resources, how he has a passion for pro wrestling. What do you think about that? I mean, we're going to talk about what he hopes ROH gets to, but this is obviously, he's a guy, he's AEW. He's been an AEW original, first ever tag team champions, SCU. Is this just him saying these things to make his boss happy? Or do you think he actually feels this?
I think Christopher Daniels absolutely feels it, man. He doesn't strike me as the kind of guy that's just gonna, blow smoke up someone's ass just for the sake of doing it. Like, I don't think he would waste his breath on it. So, and I think, we've already talked about how we really hope that Christopher Daniels on screen and off screen, or on and off screen, continues to have an influential role here in ROH. Yeah, like you said, man, I'm still reeling from that match tonight. Yeah, but I think it's a good review, and I mean, I think sometimes you can also kind of come off critically with Tony Khan saying that he doesn't have a ceiling for sometimes. Sometimes that's a fault, but I think with ROH here that really it really works well. And he wouldn't have bought the company if he didn't have his respect and love and admiration for it. And I'm so glad that he did. I'm loving the weekly product we're getting.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. And to what you just said, I think what like he could have done, he could have put this on the shelf and use it as just inventory on a streaming service, or just selling the merchandise, or having the rights to certain characters and likeness. But he's putting the work into not only create a weekly television show, but separate it from his programming. And that just shows his true passion, because all in all, I think, we talked about the MSG show. They mentioned it tonight with Matt Taven winning the ROH championship in a triple threat match at MSG. Tony Khan was in the building at MSG consuming that show as a fan all the way back. And I have the poster on my wall of that event. And it was a beautiful night of pro wrestling, New Japan ROH Supercard. And that felt like wasn't the birth of AEW. It was the birth of like that movement. And it felt very special. Like, obviously All In is what AEW spurned from, but things like that Supercard at ROH, they should get a lot of credit for the groundswell that they created.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I mean, I think it just shows like the difference in what happens when you have somebody who is a fan of the business, behind the scene and book, having the book and pencil, and versus somebody who thinks they created the business and controls the narrative.
So Christopher Daniels continuing talks that he hopes ROH returns to the prominence it had before the COVID-19 pandemic. And he said, I hope going forward we can bring ROH back to the prominence it had before the pandemic. That situation, ROH is probably the promotion affected most by it. Hopefully with Tony behind the scenes, we can bring ROH back up, get it on Honor Club, and get people excited about ROH. I'm looking forward to being part of it, trying to contribute and trying to get more opportunities in ROH myself and Matt. It's a really good point. I mean, New Japan Pro Wrestling was really damaged by having to not have any crowds in front of them, but this was the final blow for a wavering promotion. And a lot of promotions were able to survive throughout that time without fans, without having, being unique with TV, not having obviously the revenue that the live gate brings. But this was honestly, it was the final blow, and it might be all told a blessing in disguise, because now we're getting this version of ROH because it went out while it was floundering with Sinclair. And I've been critical of how it was presented weekly TV. They would mash up different matches. It had no sequential order. So everything they're doing now is the opposite of what we were getting with Sinclair. And I can't be happier as an ROH fan, because we're getting billed to Supercard of Honor. It's not just one-off matches, and it has a feeling that they're building something underneath. 18-year-old Billy Starks. We have other young stars being given some shine. It's not just a nostalgia product. It's building towards the future.
Yeah, it's a nice blend, man, of getting to see, some of the Ring of Honor stars that, of old that we love. But yeah, they're doing a great job of blending, honoring the past, but also setting up the future of it really well.
So with that being said, let's get into the fourth week of TV, and we'll put the results over here. So if you guys are following along, and if you watch the show, if not, don't worry, we'll catch you up and talk about the matches you should check out. You should really watch the whole thing. It's 2 hours fly by, as Colton and I always say. And the show starts, Colton, with Lexi Nair in the back with Samoa Joe issuing an open challenge for the ROH TV title. He wants to show Mark Briscoe what's in store for him at Supercard of Honor. This feels like a tune-up match. Not having seen the spoilers. I didn't know who they'd bring out. I honestly knew Samoa Joe would come out victorious because they're building towards something bigger. We'll talk about who's there, but who were your early predictions? Was it you think it was going to be someone in-house that we haven't seen yet, or just an ROH legend?
I thought maybe my initial thought that it was just going to be a straight squash and we were going to get some enhancement talent that maybe we had no idea who they were. Maybe somebody that we've seen on AEW Dark and Elevation a couple of times. I really had no predictions going into it whatsoever, but I think I'm happy to see it. I think it makes a lot of sense. We're 2 weeks out from Supercard of Honor, and there's nothing wrong. Everybody knows that Joe's a fucking monster, but there's nothing wrong with continuing to just kind of beat that into us and send that message home going into the pay-per-view.
And I think they're really setting aside the time to build up Joe further and further because of the time. I mean, we saw him get choked out at Revolution by Wardlow, but he's no worse for the wear. Samoa Joe, he just takes 1 week of squash matches and screaming at the TV and just destroying people like this week we saw here to build him back up. But I think ROH was like, you know what? He lost the TNT championship to Wardlow. They made him look a certain type of way. Let's bring him here and make sure the ROH fans, whether they are crossover fans or they're just one-off, we got to make sure they believe that he is an absolute killer, and they're doing a really good job of that.
Yeah, it's no argument that Joe is one of the toughest sons of bitches on the roster and in the wrestling world, just period.
So we open up with probably, to my estimation, the best commentary team in all of wrestling right now, Ian Riccaboni and Caprice Colvin, who continue to shine on a weekly basis. And we talk about the fans being in the arena. We talk about the wrestlers being in the arena for the full tapings, but these guys do a really good job of making it feel authentic, that it's not this canned, taped, bulk level of wrestling that we're seeing here. It really feels like we're about 2 weeks away, 10 days away from Supercard of Honor. And it's weird because they filmed this 10 days ago, but you could really feel the passion in their voice talking about the card and building up and having the foresight to know what day it is on the tapings. And I know that's easier said than done. We can all sit here and say, well, they have it in front of them, but there's a difference between filming in advance and having that urgency as a build-up show has.
And when you say that, man, like it just kind of hit me that you can't tell in their delivery whatsoever that they're on their fourth show of the day. Like it's just as fresh as it would be live. Like they are, I think, underrated and undervalued as a commentary duo in the wrestling world. I 100% agree with you. They're my favorite call team doing it today. And like I said, I'm a little biased because I do prefer a 2-man team versus a 3-man team. Not saying anything bad or taking anything away from Excalibur, Taz, and Tony Schiavone. I think they're doing a great job, but I just prefer the cadence, the timbre, and the rhythm of a 2-man team.
100%. And I think like we've seen Caprice and we've seen Ian on the AEW Dynamite broadcast. They've been involved in the ROH presentation when it was mixed in, but I think seeing them work their magic with the restrictions or whatever it is for having the AEW, having to explain what ROH was like almost a burden that is no longer on their shoulders, and they can just focus on what's in the ring. And they do a beautiful job. If you close your eyes, you know exactly what's going on. It's like a radio. It's like baseball being broadcast on the radio. That's how they really take the approach. And it's so beautiful. Like I think they do such a great job.
Yeah, they absolutely do.
So we lead into the first match here. We have Mark Briscoe taking on Tony Nese, and Tony Nese has the varsity athletes in the corner with Josh Woods and, of course, Smart Mark Sterling, who's a busy guy. We put this on ROH every week. He is a busy dude. He's the modern-day ROH Bobby Heenan. Tell us about this match and what happened and what did you like about it or maybe didn't like about it?
Man, I love Mark Briscoe. I think he's the best way to start off the show every week. I want him at the top of the show. I'll take him in the middle of the show, end of the show, wherever you want to put him. Tony Nese, too, I always like seeing Tony Nese. He's an incredible physical specimen, good technical wrestler. I tell you what I did not like, though, is the way that Nese started this match. Total fucking cheap shot. No adherence to the code of honor. Just comes in and, gets Briscoe with the knee, but, Mark's not going to let that stop him. He gets right back up and quickly gets on the offensive. I thought overall it was a good match, man. It's classic Mark Briscoe match. He takes Tony Nese to the floor before landing the Cactus Jack elbow off the apron, taking it high to the limit early on. I'll tell you what, though, both Mark Sterling and Josh Woods paying dividends. Both of them getting a shot, just kind of getting a distraction on Mark Briscoe and him getting pushed into the ring post there. But I thought overall it was a good match. It was a pretty good showcase for both guys. I will say Tony Nese hit probably I'm a Tony Nese fan. I think he's a good technical wrestler, but he hit probably the softest chop I've ever seen in my life. Mark Briscoe out against the apron, man, about like 4 minutes in. Like he just went and chopped him, and it was just like, I was almost like an Orange Cassidy chop. There was no thud. It was almost comically soft. So I just had to call Tony out on that. Sorry, Tony. But overall, man, I thought it was a great match. Absolutely love the finish, like the iconoclasm, and it's a hell of a lariat that he got into that rolling Spicoli driver before hitting the elbow again. I always love seeing Mark Briscoe catch a win.
Yeah, and I think they're doing a really good job of building Mark Briscoe up as this force in the singles division. And it doesn't feel like it's as awkward as it probably would feel if Jay was still here. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that it's a really good way of, first of all, honoring Jay's legacy, but also staying true to who he is. It's not really changing who Mark Briscoe is, but it's putting some more emphasis on what he's able to bring to the ring as a singles competitor. And I really enjoy it. I think it would shock me if he doesn't come out victorious to win the TV title at Supercard of Honor. And I think that moment's going to be emotional for everybody involved. I mean, especially we saw him celebrating with his family at the end of this match. We got a big Murph sighting, and obviously he was embracing his family in the crowd, so they were there for the tapings. It was a big moment for the Briscoe family who, let's be honest, they're still grieving. Like, this is still fresh, and this is the way, obviously, wrestlers cope with things. They get back in the ring and wrestle, and this is a story that obviously you'd rather your brother at your side. This is something the Briscoes were going to be first and foremost the emphasis of ROH. That was made clear by Tony Khan a while ago, and this was going to be the place they lived. Sign them to a long-term deal. They were going to be guys that they built around. It's evident how much we miss Jay, but I think Mark is really carrying the legacy for the both of them in such a great way. And I'm looking forward to that match with Joe. I think it's going to bang. I don't know how it's going to, I think Mark's coming out, but I don't know how it's going to go. And that's also the beautiful part about pro wrestling.
Yeah, I think that Mark and Joe are going to just make absolute magic, man. It's going to be a barn burner. Love seeing the little Briscoes out there at the end, man. Like all the shirtless kids running around. It was just very, very appropriate with the overall Briscoes vibe and theme that just follows that family. And yeah, man, like you said, I like a little predictability in my wrestling from time to time, and I would be absolutely shocked if they don't put the belt on Mark here at Supercard of Honor. Like you said, I don't know if it would have made sense for Mark to get. I think it would have felt forced for Mark to get a singles run this early on in ROH if Jay was still with us. So, obviously that's a wound that his family and the wrestling community as a whole is still feeling. But without that, we wouldn't be getting what we're getting. And I'm so far really enjoying his single run and can't wait to see more of it.
And he's paying tribute to who they are as a tag team. And we saw that. I love the ending sequence with the Spicoli driver and then the Froggy Bow. A lot of good spots. You mentioned the Cactus Jack elbow, but like he's doing a lot of what he would do as a tag team wrestler, but bringing a different fire in the ring. And people forget Mark Briscoe never got that singles run. Jay Briscoe had a run, and he had all those memorable matches in the world title picture and the TV title picture going out there, and Mark never did. So this is something that I'm sure is very special to him in such a bittersweet way. But we move towards this next six-man tag match, and they're doing their best to building up a challenger to the Embassy, and we've been seeing this coming. And this is the Trustbusters in action again. Ari Daivari, Jeeves K, who's VSK in the local Long Island area over here, and Slim J, and of course the aforementioned Smart Mark Sterling is also involved. They're taking on the team of AR Fox, Blake Christian, and Metalik, and they're putting some fire behind this team. They feel like a throw together. Obviously, AR Fox is part of the other trio of Top Flight. So they just picked him from there and they threw him to ROH, and they were combining with Metalik and Blake Christian, who have no other alliance aside from just being right place, right time, helping people at the end of matches. This match had a pretty hot finish, and no disparaging the Trustbusters at all, but I am getting very tired of the act myself. I think I'm glad it's not on Dynamite, and I think it fits better here. I really do, but there's a piece of me, and maybe it's because it's being taped on the same day. This might be the one thing that it feels like it's the same thing over and over again with them. And I was impressed with AR Fox and Blake Christian. I think they vibe really well. Metalik kind of sticks out in that trio for whatever reason. Like I don't know who else could fit in, but he's the one guy I'm looking at. Like he does bring a little bit of that lucha style to the group that Blake and both AR Fox have. But I don't know. I think it's a mashup team that I don't see them beating the Embassy at Supercard of Honor, and I don't know if they should.
I don't necessarily see them beating the Embassy, but I see them putting on an absolute banger with the Embassy. I think they're definitely the most logical choice. I mean, I'm with you, man. When we first week of TV, Trustbusters seem like they're going to, basically just be the jobbers. They're going to be some enhancement talent, but I think they've proven in the last 3 weeks, man, that like they might be doing the job, but they're not enhancement talent. They can fucking go.
Right.
Like, absolutely. Like, but I'm with you. I could use a little bit of breathing room from them. So, maybe on this next chunk of shows post the pay-per-view that we get a little bit of a break from the Truthbusters. I will say though, man, like I haven't seen a whole lot from Jeeves K. Really impressed with his work in the ring tonight. Guy can definitely go. Smart Mark. He's getting his steps in, brother. He should have just fucking stayed. He should have just stayed out there. Like should have just stayed out and waited for them to come to him. But very impressed, man. I think you really have something there talking about Metalik standing out. The guy's just incredible. I feel like you could put him with 2 other guys in a trios or a 6-man team, and he's going to be the one that stands out anywhere. I can't think of anybody that's going to stand out more than him. His style and his speed for his build is just incredible. Really looking forward to seeing that matchup between them. Whether they take the titles off them or not, it's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, and the ending sequence, as I mentioned, with the hot finish, there was a Tower of Doom spot that took out K and Slim J, and then Fox hit a cutter in the 450 for the win. I can't really say it enough how great AR Fox really is, and I understand what Tony Khan saw in him. And if you watch AR Fox matches from the Indies and the things he was able to do in like lead up to these moments, the guy's unbelievable. And we obviously saw El Hijo del Vikingo tear it up on Dynamite last night, but AR Fox is cut from that same cloth. There's stuff that AR Fox brings to the ring. For a guy who's as muscular as he is, I can't believe he can do it. So, outside of this 6-man thing, I would love AR Fox to be one of those guys that they boost to the main event TV title picture. I think he deserves the world.
Dude, that rolling cutter that he did, like where he also simultaneously did like a front somersault into the cutter, was incredible. I've never seen anything like that. Yeah, I'm eating up everything they're giving me, AR Fox. I can't get enough of it.
So after the match, the Embassy came out and they jumped Fox, Christian, and Metalik, and they were standing tall. We'll see Brian Cage in the Embassy later in the night when he's in action, but they're doing their best to build this up. And you and I, the first week we were talking about this ROH programming, we circled the 6-man division as like, what could they possibly do? So although I'm being critical of them like tossing this team together, but I guess from saying in the same breath, what else could they have done? There's no other 6-man teams, and it has me believing. I don't know if these 6-man titles are long for the wear here on this roster, because unless they do a lot of rehabilitation and building up 6-man squads, there's nobody else. Like, unless you really start picking ones from AEW, but what's the point? You have a trios division there.
Right. Yeah. I'm wondering, I'm with you, man. I don't know if there's space for 2 trios divisions under the same umbrella between AOW and Ring of Honor. So it'll be interesting to see. Maybe they bring in some folks that we're not seeing anywhere else right now, but I hope that they don't just continue to split tag teams or borrow one and add here just to continue to keep this, keep it alive. I mean, if we need to retire the belts, we can retire the belts. There's plenty of programming and content without them.
And I remember the conversation happening. The trios titles were just obviously rumored for a long time in AEW. It's been something that Tony Khan wanted to do. He talked about it on the Jericho Cruise, the first one, when they had Dynamite there. So it's been in the works for a while. And then purchasing ROH, there was always, this is part of the legacy of what they brought. So watching them introduce the 6-man titles on that first Supercard of Honor pay-per-view, I was like, that's interesting that they're bringing them back here, especially with the trios titles in mind. I thought it was like, nixing the idea of potentially having those trios titles, but lo and behold, we got them anyway. And now we have these 2 6-man titles. And I understand, like, you can make the argument there's 2 tag divisions. Why can't you have 2 trios divisions? But I think the onus on the roster is like, it really weighs it down if you don't have a lot of trios that are just already in place. And they have none of them in ROH.
Right. I mean, maybe we just see some more factions getting built up in ROH, and that will kind of lend itself to having more on the roster. I will say, though, if it gets to a point where we're looking like we're going to, we don't have to retire them, but if we're just going to hang up the belts, put them on the shelf for a little bit, I definitely want to see them go on old Dalton Castle and the boys before we do that. I definitely want to see those guys get another run with it.
100%. Or you can do like a unification match in AEW or some, down the line. I'm talking, if you want to just combine them and have them put together, and eventually if you want to split them apart again, but that's conversation for another time. We'll see how this goes at Supercard of Honor. If they're going to keep AR Fox, Christian, Metal Elite together, maybe they become, a full-time trio. Maybe we're eating our words. Maybe we're eating some some crow from All Elite Farms. But let's move on to our next match here. It's Lady Frost, who's become quite the face here, versus Sky Blue. Sky Blue was in action on Dynamite last night, obviously a month apart, but she was in action last night in a losing effort. But what were your thoughts on this match? And I guess further thoughts on Lady Frost. Obviously, Sky Blue picked up the victory here.
Yeah, man, I like Lady Frost a lot. She's got a cool look. I did not catch this before tonight, but they build her from just somewhere cold. That really popped me. I laughed out loud in my living room watching it. Yeah, man, she's got a great look. She's like a really nice combination of like explosive, but also like has a lot of grace and control, like we saw tonight. I thought it was a good showing for both women. Sky Blue's coming a long way, man. Like, it's really interesting to see this that was taped back in February and see where she's at on AEW. Like, you can tell that I think Ring of Honor is a really good place for her to get more reps in as a singles competitor. She's been thrown together as a tag team a couple of times in AEW programming. So I want to see more Sky Blue and Lady Frost for that matter on ROH. I thought it was a pretty good match. I was nice to see Sky Blue get the win. I will say, man, I'm a big fan of Sky Blue's finisher, the Skyfall. It fell a little flat tonight. I'm not really sure what happened, but it seemed like just the payoff on it was a little off tonight. And Sky Blue, I thought she had a good showing besides that, but I could tell, there was a shot on the hard cam of her up on the ropes there at the end, kind of winking to the crowd. You could tell she's a little bit blown up. So I think it's good for her to continue getting these singles, like at least 10-minute singles matches in to, continue to build up her reps. Cause I mean, I think she's got future women's superstar written all over her, man.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think Sky Blue's been on the losing end so much on those AEW shows, Rampage, Dynamite. She's picking up wins on Dark, but this will go a long way of helping building up who she is to the on-screen character. And I think the thing with Sky Blue is, I was impressed with her. We talked about Billy Starks being a young 18-year-old. Sky Blue is really, really young as well. You could build the women's division around them. And I don't want ROH to be this feeder system for AEW, but it's a good place for someone like Sky Blue, who right now, the top of the women's division is so loaded that she doesn't have a place yet. It's not for lack of talent, not for lack of charisma. She doesn't have a space there. But also want to give shout out to Lady Frost, as you did so beautifully before. I mean, I would lock her down. She seems like someone that you could have on either roster, and she's impressive. And I think she has a unique presentation as well. And I think she's a great athlete, really good look. Like, I really was impressed with her. I was not familiar with her work prior to that first time we saw her here in ROH. And that's what it's all about. You want to present new characters and have interesting dynamics in your division. And Lady Frost was impressive. I'd love to see more of her.
Yeah, I want to see more of her too. I'd like to, kind of the same way you were saying, we've seen Sky Blue, be on the losing end so many times. I'm looking forward to seeing Lady Frost get a little more development and get a few W's in her column too.
Absolutely. And we move on to the next match here. It's Dralistico and Rouge, who form La Faction Ingronable, with Jose the Assistant in their corner, taking on the Foundation, which it's the first time I'm hearing their name, the Foundation, but it's Red Titus and Tracy Williams. This match, I mean, goddamn, Rouge is a house of fire, and I feel like the presentation, we talk about Kenny Omega and New Japan and AEW being different, but under whatever banner like Rouge is under, ROH is definitely the one he has a little more fire. It feels comfortable wrestling with that apron or those turnbuckles or something here. But this match was a showcase for Dralistico and Rouge. And I know that Red Titus and Tracy Williams, they have ROH lineage, and Red Titus, a former champion himself. But the team of Dralistico and Rouge, it was absolutely amazing to watch them do. And seeing Rouge finish the match up with the bull's horns, and obviously the crowd finishing Rouge's catchphrase, that was something to behold as well. That shows how over he really is. And I understand there's not that many people in the crowd, but they were familiar with his shtick. And I think that's a huge piece where he hit the drop kick in the corner for the win. I love what Rouge brings. And I've been very happy with what we've seen from him, especially I think the Danielson match was a turning point. I think he finally feels comfortable in his spot here with the presentation. He's really separating himself from the rest of the roster. And this is a guy we're talking about, former world champion, big time guy. And we'll talk about other former world champions. We talk about Matt Taven later in the show. But Rouge is a guy that, I mean, at any time, heat this guy up. And we even talked about it. Potentially, he could be taking on for the ROH World Championship against Claudio. We saw a little bit of that build on AEW television before this got started. So I think anytime you want to start it up, you put the world title on. Maybe it's Eddie Kingston, maybe it's Claudio, but Rouge could be that guy you just heat right up and bring right up to the summer months.
Oh man, yeah, you can always have him on the back burner and bring him in whenever you want. You said it yourself, man. He's so over. I know that they're supposed to be heels, but man, it just like I said it last week too. Like, they walk out to the ring and they're just so over with the crowd that you immediately have to have them do something to get cheap heat to remind everybody watching at home, oh shit, these guys are heels, and they did it. Were flipping off Tracy Williams and Rhett Titus. Yeah, I thought it was a good match, pretty good showing for both teams, man. I like Rhett Titus. I'm kind of waiting. We didn't get it tonight. I'm kind of waiting for more information on this Reach for the Sky ladder match, because I think it's, obvious that Roosh and Dralistico are going to be one of the other teams. I mean, you got the Lucha Brothers, Roosh and Dralistico, and the Lucha Brothers on their own. That team, the one-on-one, those teams together is a fucking dream match, ladders involved or not. But I'm waiting to get a little bit more information on that, man, because it's right around the corner. We're, like I said, we're 8 days away from that pay-per-view. So I'm interested to hear who the other teams are going to be. I think Titus and Williams could be right in there. But then again, there's obviously Aussie Open, obviously Daniels and Sydal. Like, I'm just interested to hear where it's going to land. But yeah, Roosh is. I think he fits really, really well. Not that he didn't fit in the AEW roster, but he definitely fits a lot better as a top dog here at ROH.
I completely agree. Go to the ladder match for a sec. I don't know if they announced it be 6 teams, but I think we can pencil in. Obviously, the Lucha Brothers were the first team announced, but Daniels and Sydal feel like they're custom fit for it. The Kingdom, Aussie Open. You mentioned Los Ingonables possibly in the match, but I'm not sure how many teams. If it's 6 teams, I think you really round it out and have LIJ in that as well, and I think they could be a huge addition. And to have all those athletes in the ring bumping around and ladders, that could steal the show. So, you always need a car wreck type of match. And I think that is the type of thing we're watching here. And Roosh in a ladder match and some of the spots that Dralistico can pull off, and not to mention Sydal, like there's a lot of potential for memorable moments, and we'll see. I mean, I think honestly, and we'll talk about it later in the night, I think Aussie Open is the team you should build around. I really do. I think it's the perfect opportunity to put the titles on them and let them go off and let teams work with them, because it feels like everything they touch turns into masterpieces. They're a gem, factory. Really, that's what it is. I think Aussie Open has really separated themselves from just being the guys who tailed Will Ospreay to the ring in AEW Dynamite for a few weeks. But going back to my match of the year last year was the Aussie Open match that they had 3 of them. So it's not a surprise how good they are, but I think when they're having the showcase without Will Ospreay taking most of that shine, it's really obvious how great they are. I mean, you go back to the England match they had with FTR. It's not a surprise how good they are, but I think it's catching some people by surprise.
Yeah, especially people who might be, a little bit more unfamiliar with their work. I think, yeah, they're going to take your breath away if this is some of the first time that you're seeing their in-ring work. Yeah, I completely agree. There's no reason to put it on anybody else at this point, in my opinion. Not to jump back or anything, that we were talking about potential trios teams. I'd like to see a little bit more Preston Vance, and maybe we could see Dralistico, Roosh, and Preston Vance just as LFI being a contender in the trios, either in AEW or here at Ring of Honor. So yeah, I'm loving to see Preston Vance step into his own instead of his role as 10 in the Dark Order. So hopefully we get to see a little more of him as well.
That's a good point. Then, I mean, we could just probably stack the division together. And I know if they put some emphasis on it and Tony Khan has deep pockets, he'll sign people. And if it's a priority for him, he'll make it a priority and get it done. But it seems like a little overkill on a Wednesday night, have a trios division. And on Thursday night, you have a 6-man division. It's what separated ROH from other brands for a bit. So we'll see what happens there. But let's move to one of the highlights of the show. And this was something that you couldn't read about in spoilers. So if you're reading just spoilers, you missed something great. Caprice Coleman sat down with Eddie Kingston and Claudio Castagnoli, and dude, this segment was great. And there's a lot of heat on Claudio in a bad way about how he is on the mic. I thought he really did a lot to give 2 middle fingers to the naysayers about his quality of promo. This was a world title level promo here, referencing the history with Eddie Kingston, and Eddie Kingston bring it right back to him, where he referenced Claudio leaving Chikara when he signed with WWE while feuding with Kingston, not giving him his match. And he said he's going to force him to do business with him this time, blurring that line of kayfabe where what's real, what's not. And there was a lot of fire here. And Eddie Kingston wearing that semi-pro Will Ferrell jersey as well in this segment. What were your thoughts on this, man? This was highlight of the show.
100% my favorite part of the show tonight, man. It's not to give it away early, but yeah, this was highlight of the show for me. This was the best backstage segment I've seen in a long time. I completely agree that Claudio really showed out here with his mic skills, but just at the beginning, just the opening, their body language told such a story just in the first 20 seconds, man. I mean, you got Claudio sitting there just exuding that he's an insufferable fucking prick that looks down his nose, that he's better than everybody. And like Eddie is just, you can tell he's about to fucking explode, just having to sit there and be this close to this guy after the things that he said about him to his face over the last few weeks. You know, his knees and legs can't quit moving. I thought it was great, man. It was a lot of fire between these guys. Also, you know, shout out to Caprice Coleman doing a fucking great job of mediating this. You know, I'm used to seeing Jim Ross in this kind of, you know, segment growing up, and even recently more recently in AEW. But I thought Caprice Coleman did an absolutely fantastic job. Man, there was a couple of words that Claudio kept throwing around, man, that were some real daggers at old Eddie. It was that he, you know, pity party and him imploding when shit gets hard. And I thought that was kind of really playing on Eddie's past struggles with mental health issues that, you know, are very real, that Eddie's been very open about. And I don't think that shit should be off limits. I think it's really awesome when you bring that kind of stuff into a storyline and kind of blur the lines of what's real, what's scripted. And yeah, it completely exceeded my expectations for being able to build and actually finally officially set this match up for Super Card of Honor. I thought that it was flawlessly executed, and I just cannot wait.
Yeah, it was sort of shocking to me that it wasn't announced yet. Seeing the card and like when he said like, "Oh, then make it official," I was like, "Wasn't it official already?" But I guess we were just assuming that it was going to happen, and of course, they had to make it official. And for Claudio, this transition for the BCC as well, you know, this is one of those things where Claudio is really fitting this heel role like a glove. And I think watching Moxley and Wheeler take to it with Bryan Danielson's absence, and of course William Regal leaving the promotion. Claudio is really leaning into this, like, as you mentioned, like he's insufferable and he feels like he's like this European super villain holding the title at his waist, while Eddie Kingston's the everyman who is like, you know, being brushed off as just a guy who's a quitter. That was the word he kept using towards him as well, and referencing those other things. And what is real and what's not between the two of these guys, and who knows? Like, that's the other great thing. Like, Eddie Kingston's famous for saying that everything he says about other people is a work and everything he says about himself is a shoot. And maybe that is a work in its own, but like that's Eddie Kingston's from the old school. And I think this match has for only having about a month build with it. It feels like a huge match. One of the bigger matches in ROH history, not just under the Tony Khan banner, but one of the, you know, in recent memory. The world title feels really important for the first time in a very long time.
Yeah. And I can't think of a better first program to have for the Ring of Honor title than have Eddie versus Claudio. I mean, Claudio's got a future as a Bond villain in the big screen if he wants it. Sure. I think for sure, man, going forward. But yeah, just, you know, I loved the continuation of the story. Like, he started out being like, you know, Eddie, you have no honor. That's why you'll never be champion. But then tonight he's like, you know what? Actually, I thought about it. You do have honor. Total backhanded fucking compliment. Like, yeah, it just, anybody who had anything bad to say about Claudio on the mic is definitely eating truckloads of crow right now.
And I understand this was a tape segment, and they, you know, all of that, and he thrived here. There's no mistaking, and I think that was the best thing I've seen from Claudio on the mic throughout WWE altogether. Like, I've never seen him, maybe never had the opportunity to do this because they always felt that he wasn't capable. But it feels like the restrictions are off, and Tony Khan's putting a lot of trust in him to work this heel character, build this persona, and carry ROH. It's a big deal to have this honor of carrying the world championship into Super Card of Honor, the first pay-per-view after your TV deal. It's a big deal that Tony Khan is giving them this.
Yeah, it's a huge deal, and it's great to see somebody finally let him take the training wheels off and see how far he can ride. And man, shout out to Eddie. And I don't think anybody else in the world could pull off a Flint Tropics jersey with a Yankees hat at the same time.
So amazing. And we move to the next match here. Matt Taven with Maria Kanellis-Bennett and Mike Bennett in his corner, taking on Darius Martin. This was just a build-up match to put some heat on the Kingdom. Matt Taven, former world champion, as I mentioned. Not much here. There's a little bit too much going on the outside for my liking, especially where it didn't really need to happen this way. I think, honestly, ROH typically doesn't use interference that much. We haven't seen it too much on these 4 weeks of television, but I can't be too upset about it. But it definitely felt like more of a sports entertainment match that shouldn't be on this program. Felt out of place.
Yeah, definitely so. I mean, it was kind of weird in general. I will say that the cheap shot that Bennett got on Darius was a really, really good spot. But yeah, I wasn't a whole lot here for me on this match. Also kind of weird. My first question was like, where's Dante? Because the lower third said Darius with Dante. So, and then
Right.
Dante didn't come out with him, but then he ran out at the end. So I don't know. I was just, as a viewer, maybe I missed something. I know that's one thing that you can't do while you're watching it when it first goes live is rewind. So like I was thinking, I was like, did I miss something here? Or was this like some sort of production flub? Yeah. And also too, man, I mean, I love both Darius and Dante, but I hope Darius isn't hurt or anything again, man, because about halfway through this match, he just kind of seemed like he was playing it a little safe, and we were just kind of nursing it to the end. And I mean, frankly, and I haven't felt like this at any point during ROH TV yet, but I could have done without this match. Didn't really need it.
Agreed. And I think, moving on to the next match here, this was a match that was a showcase for both these guys here. And is Tony Deppen getting a shot at, 1/3 of the 6-man champions, the Embassy. Brian Cage had Bishop Khan, Prince Nana, and Toa Leone in his corner. And, I think the big part of this match is Tony Deppen looked a lot better this week from last week. He didn't get a lot of offense in Samoa Joe. And Tony Deppen, former TV champion, is a guy who's emphasized on GCW, has a lot to give to the promotion he's working in. He looked very clean here. I thought the offense looked smooth, and the crowd was into him. I think that was another piece here that they got behind him in this match and chanting against Brian Cage. And that might be a credit to Brian Cage's heel work, but it also is a credit to Tony Deppen having the foresight to really work the crowd. And he looked really good. And I understand the persona that he has in GCW and ROH are completely different. Wearing the same tights, he's the same guy, but this is a completely different character, and he's doing a really good job leaning into it.
Yeah, I think so too, man. I think if you're not familiar with Tony Deppen's work, you see this pitched on the card, and you're like, "Whoa, why the fuck are we having another squash match for Cage?" But like I have in my notes, like this wasn't a squash match at all. I mean, definitely it was a David versus Goliath situation, but Deppen definitely got his shit in and looked really good doing it. I think that it was a good way to kind of build Tony Deppen's character in ROH and kind of give him this endearing underdog kind of man of the people. Kind of air about him. And I thought it did a good job of telling his story. I hope they can continue to do this, but we also see Tony getting some wins going forward because, the guy has a lot to offer. He's really good in the ring. I think, it's not like when I was growing up that, you couldn't be that size and be a wrestler. If you're good in the ring, it doesn't matter what size you are. There's a place for you, man. And I think Tony Deppen's got a lot of charisma in that little body, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of it.
Yeah, pointing cases of Vikingo last night. I mean, the guy is probably he might be smaller than Rey Mysterio. He looked so, and he in an AEW ring, and Kenny Omega is not the biggest guy either. I met him in person. I'm a little bit taller than him. Like Vikingo is, I don't know the exact height, maybe 5'6", 5'7", something like that. So he's small, but impressive as hell. But before we move on from this match, we have the Embassy beating down Deppen after the match, and Caprice Coleman and Ian selling it like a champ, saying like, what is the point of this? The match is there. You guys shook hands prior. I mean, Metalik, Blake Christian, Air Fox made the save to further emphasize, yes, this is going to be the match on the pay-per-view for the 6-man titles. And you know what? It has some heat behind it. They're really doing a good job of telling the stories. They could have easily just put up a match graphic and said this is going to be the match, but they're doing their best of making it feel like there's some heat behind it with personal feelings.
And they're not forcing it at all. It's very naturally occurring, the storyline here, which I really appreciate. It doesn't feel like they're pushing this mashup trios team. It's very organic. And yeah, I mean, it's what better way to put heat on the Embassy than to have them just continue to rub Deppen into the dirt after the match. So yeah, looking forward to it. I think it'll be a good 6-man.
Next match here, we have Silas Young taking on Shane Taylor, JD Griffey. And this match could have went either way. And I know Shane Taylor was a focal point of the ROH of old. Like, obviously, he is, a guy that they put a lot of emphasis on with the Shane Taylor promotions, things like that. And honestly, I think he's got big things in the future. And I think Tony Khan sees a lot in him. Shane Taylor had a lot of support from the crowd. And this match had a lot of offense both ways. It was emphasized. I was very impressed with Silas Young, as I was when he showed up on Dynamite for that one-off. So he's a sneaky athletic guy who has an old school feel. We mentioned like Jake Roberts and Magnum TA vibes about him. But Shane Taylor got the win here. Package pile driver. But there was a lot of back and forth, some near falls. Silas Young got his shit in. And I think this was the point. You want Silas Young to feel like a contender while Shane Taylor went over. Wouldn't shock me to see both of these guys approaching the main event very, very soon once they kind of things settle with the Eddie Kingston and Claudio stuff going on.
Yeah, very much so, man. I'm big fans of both these guys. I mean, yeah, this is the only third time I've ever seen Silas Young, but I absolutely love him. He picked up Shane Taylor so effortlessly into that rolling Samoan drop, man. And it didn't pay off for him tonight. But yeah, this was the match where most times tonight I was like, oh shit, this is going to go either way. And I hope that this isn't the last chapter between Silas Young and Shane Taylor either. I could watch definitely a much longer match between these guys. It was good shit.
It's going to be interesting what they do on Supercard of Honor because they do have the pre-show, the 0 hour. Maybe they'll have another match or they'll figure out a way to get them on. But right now they really don't have a program. And I know we just saw Shane Taylor show up about a week ago, so it's going to take a little bit to get some steam behind him. But picking up some wins and building momentum and picking up where he left off, truly, where he was in Ring of Honor and honoring who he is to the ROH roster. And this is paired with the conversation we had before, is blurring that and combining, mixing it up with the young talent, some new stuff from AEW, but also paying homage to the old ROH and that the good that came from it. And honestly, Shane Taylor is one of those good parts that came from the old ROH.
Yeah, 100%, man. And also I will say, just really, you always see a lot of at the end of the match, the code of honor being adhered to, but like you could really see like legit, these guys respect the shit out of each other tonight after that match. And yeah, it was real cool.
Next match was quick as well. And it was the Lucha Baddie taking on Billie Starkz. So Miranda Alizé, she came out with a mask on, took it off after. I think this is the first time we saw Alizé here. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think we've seen her on ROH television as of right now.
Yeah, this is her debut.
Yeah, and Billie Starkz, 18 years old. They made that clear in the beginning of the match. And she's someone we've seen across multiple promotions, like very, very young. She has some spots in matches where she's green and she flubs some of the things that she does. In this match, she looked really good. And I thought that they kept it short enough where it showcased what she's able to do. And she has a good energy about her. I really like that, she's being someone that they're building around here. And I understand she was part of this group of tapings. So we'll see what happens next time they're around here. The next group of tapings and bulk 4 weeks of shows and stuff. So, but watching them go at it here, honestly, I didn't know where we were going to go because I'm so used to seeing Billie Starkz on the losing side of things in GCW and elsewhere that it was interesting to see her get the win here. And you know what? I thought the match was good for the length it was.
I thought the exact same thing, man. I just assumed that Billie was probably going to take the loss here because she's the young one. But man, a lot of times I'm a little bit biased because Billie's, a hometown girl here in Louisville, but love seeing her. I thought tonight there wasn't a green move in the ring from her, man. She looked really, really good. They do, like, commentary teams like to throw the term prodigy around with her. And, I've seen times where it looks like she is and times where it's like, all right, well, that might be going a little far. But tonight she did definitely look for being an 18-year-old wrestler, man. Yeah, she's absolutely a prodigy. I think that she, her Sky Blue, I think Willow's quite a bit ahead of them, but I think there's a lot of room to build the ROH women's division around those three. And just, yeah, loved getting the surprise of seeing Billie pick up that win tonight.
Yeah. And there's the presence for an 18-year-old to find the camera and have the presence. And like, she really is, she feels polished in that way. And a lot of times, like, we can talk about the wrestling all we want, but having the presence to recognize where the hard cam is and have the presence of mind to sell and emote, like for an 18-year-old, I'm thinking about myself as an 18-year-old, like she has a maturity about her that is beyond her years. So that's, definitely a compliment to her. And that's why she's on this roster right now.
Be really interesting to see where she is in 10 years because she's already light years ahead of her age.
And we move to the next match here. And dude, this is one of those matches that you kind of, magic happened in that taping studio. It was Chris Daniels, Matt Sydal taking on Aussie Open, Kyle Fletcher, and Mark Davis. And we mentioned before, Aussie Open has been absolutely the highlight of all the ROH shows thus far. And I think looking back at all the matches, they probably were their matches of the week. Honestly, like to have this match on this card in a tape fashion, like, and the veteran nature of Daniels and Sydal working with obviously the younger team Aussie Open and the innovative offense and the crowd being red hot, despite having, like we mentioned before, they probably should have fatigue, but it just shows to the credit of what they're able to do in front of this audience. Man, I cannot tell you how good this match was. If you did not see this, to have this go back to back with Dynamite last night with Omega and Vikingo, and then have this match on Thursday night, this match was just as good. Like, and I know that's probably like feels like an overstatement, but watching this match, this was tag team personified. Like these guys got in there and they told a story while making the spots make sense. And then seeing the innovative offense, not only from Aussie Open, but seeing it from Daniels and Sydal, the things they were able to do, the near falls, going back and forth. It felt obvious that Aussie Open would go over in the beginning of the match, but there was parts in this match I was questioning, like maybe they'll have the veterans win and Aussie Open has to fight from underneath to get to the ladder match. Excellent, excellent match.
Dude, you hit the nail on the head. Top tier tag team wrestling. I was very impressed with the showing I'm always impressed with Aussie Open. You can't slight Chris Daniels and Matt Sydal on anything. But yeah, man, I thought they made beautiful music together in the ring tonight. It was by far match of the night. Man, Davis's chops on Daniels early on were just painful, man. Like I was feeling it in my back, like just watching it happen. But man, also I just can't get enough of Davis. He's so agile for a big man to go into that cartwheel reversal, man. That was fucking wild. Like you do not expect that to see that from somebody his size. But yeah, I thought this was just incredible, man. I mean, it was a showcase for both guys. You know, Daniels and Sydal are definitely veterans, but they are in incredible shape, man. And it shows. Like it doesn't look like these guys. I mean, it's been 16 years since they've tagged together. It doesn't look like they've missed a beat whatsoever. I also think they would be an obvious choice, like we mentioned earlier, for the Reach for the Sky ladder match. I could watch these guys. I could watch these two teams go at each other every week. Loved the show of respect between the two teams at the end of it. Honestly, man, my first note on this match was when it started. I was like, how in the fuck is this not the main event? Right. Like this absolutely, in my opinion, like I said, I haven't had much bad to say about anything that they've been doing on ROH TV so far, but I think this was a huge miss, man. This should have been the main event tonight because it was in my heart.
Yeah, man. And the spot we mentioned before, there's a lot of near falls in this match, but there was a spot where Chris Daniels hit a double noggin knocker, and then he hit the blue thunder bomb, and it literally was 2.85. Like he just barely got his shoulder up, and then the sequence at the end with the Angels wings, and then obviously they're going for the dental plan. Aussie Open is, and then Fletcher hit him with the spinning tombstone, and Daniels goes for the Angels wings again, and then gets cut off with the forearm, and then Aussie Open hit the double forearms before hitting the Coriolis for the win. Just beautifully done. And the structure of this match was great. Perfect length. I can't say enough good things. And like I said, this match was just as good, if, I want to say the word better than the Omega Vikingo match, because a lot of the stuff we saw from Vikingo was insane. But as far as tag team wrestling goes, you're not going to see much better from any promotion, let alone, anywhere else. Like I feel like ROH aside, like this match could have been match of the week anywhere.
Yeah, top tier, man. Really, really good to get this and that main event from last night on Dynamite back to back, man. You're just really, you don't get that lucky too often in a week.
And we moved to the main event here, which was a quick one. It was the ROH TV title and open challenge. It wound up being Cheeseburger. It's a squash match. I did like the presentation of Cheeseburger coming out with the delirious mask. And Cheeseburger is an ROH alum. Like he's a guy who has a lot of history behind him. But this was an absolute beat up job by Samoa Joe. He squash him at the Muscle Buster. After the match goes to hit another one, and then Mark Briscoe makes the save, bringing some heat for Supercard of Honor, building some personal touch. And obviously Samoa Joe knows what he was doing. He's trying to get Mark Briscoe through the curtain and get him out there. I really liked how they end the show. I agree. Aussie Open probably should have closed the show with that match, especially with how great it was. Not that they knew it was going to be as great as it was, but you could have put this in the middle of the card, built it up, and then finished the night with a good wrestling match, send the crowd home happy.
Or just having this right before the tag team match would have been just fine, especially for the length of it, man. But yeah, I mean, always nice to see Cheeseburger. I really liked the fact that they showed the graphic, like the mystery graphic of Joe versus the silhouette of Cheeseburger. And if you're an old, if you're familiar with Cheeseburger, you're an old school ROH fan. Like I feel like there's no way you would not have recognized that silhouette. So that was a kind of a nice subtle production touch from them. But yeah. Nice continuous build to the story. I thought for a minute, I was like a little surprised when Joe ran out of the ring as Mark came in. I thought maybe they were going to kind of go forehead and nose to nose and get in each other's faces a little bit. But, we still got a whole nother week of TV before Supercard of Honor. So maybe we'll get a little bit more of that.
You mentioned Supercard of Honor. This is the card we have in place. And of course, we'll preview it next Thursday, probably the go home show. And then we'll build some time. Maybe we'll go live, Colton, because we're going to need a little bit more time than an hour to preview Supercard of Honor. So join us next week, guys, as we talk about. But the card we have in place, as we talk about Mark Briscoe, Samoa Joe for the TV title. We also got Wheeler Yuta and Shibata for the pure title. Looks like we're going to get Embassy versus AR Fox, Metalik, and Blake Christian for the 6-man. Claudio and Eddie Kingston for the ROH title. For the women's title, Yuka Sakazaki versus Athena. And of course, that tag team ladder match, we're not sure exactly who's going to be in it aside from Lucha Brothers, but seems like it might be Daniels and Sydal, the Kingdom, Aussie Open. Maybe we'll have who we don't know. Maybe it's 6 teams, 4 teams. We don't exactly know, but I think as we do know, it's going to be a banger and it's going to be a legendary night.
Yeah, it's going to be a hard act to follow, man. I know it's Mania weekend, but it's going to really set the tone for the weekend. I think I'm honestly, I might be most excited about Supercard of Honor out of any of the shows all weekend.
And I feel partial to it, especially since we're covering so intimately now. And it feels like we are really, I mean, the show has been doing really well as far as like the viewers go. Like it's one of the highest viewed shows on the Turnbuckle Tavern for the last couple of weeks and almost at 300 views last week. So guys, thank you for the support. Make sure you guys watch the other Turnbuckle Tavern shows, but stay with us for the rest of it. We're going to be covering this at length and who knows where it goes. And Supercard of Honor is going to be a lot of fun to do. We'll definitely have a post wrap-up show. I don't know if we're going to wait till Thursday to cover it, but with the busy WrestleMania weekend, we'll see where it fits in with Colton and I's schedule.
Yeah, man, really looking forward to it. And thanks to everybody out there watching. Yeah, keep with us. We're having a ball.
All right, so we're going to get into top honors, talk about our match or moment of the week. All right, Colton, top honors. You kind of told us before what your favorite moment of the night was, but I'll give you the platform here just in case you change your mind.
No, man, I didn't. It's even as good as Aussie Open this match was tonight. My top honors is hands down going to the segment between Eddie and Claudio. I just thought it was beautiful storytelling and beautiful building and continuous development of a story that I haven't seen like that from really any promotion in a while. It was one of the best backstage segments I've seen in quite some time. So yeah, by and far, given the top honors to Eddie, Claudio, and Caprice as well. Can't leave him out.
Absolutely, and I agree with you. I thought it was definitely a highlight, but I'm going to give it to Aussie Open versus Chris Daniels and Matt Sydal. Kyle Fletcher and Mark Davis, like I mentioned before, they're working from behind because they came into the AEW casual audience of just Will Ospreay's henchmen, and now they're really establishing their names as the competitors. And if you're familiar with the work happening in the independents or other promotions across England, doesn't matter, New Japan Pro Wrestling, you're familiar with Fletcher and Davis, but it feels like these last 4 weeks of television was a coming out party for Fletcher and Davis, where they're like, you know what, we are the best tag team in the world, bar none. And I think we've seen it night after night that they may just have that case. And I know there's a lot of tag teams out there. You can name FTR, you can even go down the list, name the Young Bucks, but it's hard to just be right now firing on all cylinders. Fletcher and Davis might be pound for pound the best tag team in the world, and they're proving it on a taped TV show, making a fatigued crowd go absolutely nuts. I mean, credit to Daniels and Sydal, but every night they're on this TV program, they're worth watching. They're worth the price of admission of the subscription it costs for ROH Honor Club by themselves. I truly mean that.
Yeah, I mean, I was I'm feeling so lucky that we're getting so much of them on ROH TV. Like first episode when they first showed up, I was like, oh man, are they stopping in for a cup of coffee, or are they gonna come in here whole hog? And I'm really excited to see them at the forefront of the tag division. And yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, man. They're absolutely top contenders. You know, I'm a huge FTR fan, so it's hard for me to say that they're not number one right now. But man, Aussie Open's definitely a close second or tied for first place easily.
Well, you said it. Let's go full hog into honorable mentions and talk about the match that I recommended last week and a new match I have for you to consume this week. All right, so last week I gave you a match to watch as I do every week. You want to tell people what you thought about the match and remind us what match it was?
Certainly, man. So this week's match was Do Fixer versus Blood Generation from Supercard of Honor 5, which I believe was in 2006, if I get that right. Man, this was a great match. I will say both teams were incredible. Japanese wrestling and strong style wrestling is something that I don't consume a lot of, and I absolutely love it every time I see it. But I always feel like such a novice with all these guys because I get, I'm Chima, and I'm familiar with, but a lot of the other guys, I'm like, all right, I'm writing down names. I'm trying to remember who's who, and getting a little confused with commentary with who's who. But man, this was an absolute clinic for 6-man tag wrestling. Like, it was absolutely incredible. I'm pretty sure. Let me see. I got to go to my note here. Dude, the speed from Genki was like, he's got to be the fastest guy I've ever seen move in the ring, like ever. It was incredible. And you want to talk about tonight? We had some close finishes on ROH, or some close 2 counts on ROH. There was probably 3 different times that were probably the closest 2 counts that I've maybe ever seen in wrestling, period, from this match tonight. Halfway up until about the halfway point, man, it was kind of just the blood generation show. But then after that, like about after minute 18, it just took off. And I mean this in the best way possible when I say that this match was an absolute spot fest. It was just spot after spot after spot from every man on both teams. And the thing that I love about that is, like, you can never tell when the finish is going to be, man. Right. Dragon Kid had this one like standing Hurricane Rana flip that, like, I swear to God, he did it so fast that it looked like he fucking teleported on TV. Like, you saw him jump up and then all of a sudden he was just flipped over and in front of you on the mat. It was awesome. I would go back. I'm definitely going to go back and watch this match again and again and again. I thought it was great. And yeah, I thought that the finish with a great finish with Dragon Kid getting it. Like I said, at that point, there was so many good spots. I had no idea that was going to be the finish. Man, I got to say, just off initial view and style of wrestling, I love Blood Generation as a tag, or as a trios team and as a faction. Really like those guys. I've seen some of Chima's work. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, he spent a little time in WWE.
Possibly, but he was on I think he was on the first Dynamite. He was on the first
few Dynamites, I think, too. So, man, yeah, seeing some of his older work was very, very cool. Also going back, bringing it full circle of being a NASCAR fan. His Blood Generation text on the back of his on his trunks looked very much like the Goodwrench font that old Dale used to wear. I was like, oh man, I got to get me a T-shirt with that on it. That was pretty sweet.
Full circle. We need to get Nick from Extra Cooler to commission a Colton Mania with the NASCAR font or the Dale font for you. That'd be an amazing logo for you.
Dude, yeah, I'll write the check now. Let's do it.
So the match I have to recommend for you this week, it's going to be Bryan Danielson versus James Gibson from September 15th, 2005, Glory by Honor 4. And the reason I picked this match is I'm a huge Bryan Danielson fan. He's one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. And this is the match that started his historic title run as champion. So he was champion for 462 days following this match, had 38 successful title defenses, which is the most in all of ROH history. I won't tell you the ending here, but he does use the crossface chicken wing in the move, and one of the best moves. It's the Bob Backlund finish, and he's been using a lot of more submissions while he was here. And obviously, you know, he's on a little hiatus now, but he was ending matches with different submissions, not just the yes lock or whatever you want to call it. He was doing other finishes, but I love the crossface chicken wing as a submission, and bring the move back. I think not just for him, someone else bring it back and use it full time. But this match, James Gibson is Jamie Noble from WWE. Absolutely epic.
I'm a huge Jamie Noble fan, man. I've always been a really big fan of his work in the cruiserweight division. I'm coming out and wearing those long jean shorts and just being a general West Virginia redneck. I think these guys would make magic together. I've never seen this match. I'm also a huge Bryan Danielson fan and never get sick of watching his matches from any era of his career. So great recommendation. Can't wait to watch it.
One of my favorite moments as a wrestling fan is I went to some of those ROH shows at Sports Plus, Lake Grove, around the 2004, 2005 era, where it was around this time. Danielson, Jay Lethal, CM Punk, James Gibson, all those guys were on this roster. And they did an autograph signing after the show or during intermission, and James Gibson had a match and he was concussed. And like, you could just tell he was not with it, but he took the time to still meet with everybody. But I just remember like the lost look in his eye that he just like took a beating. And I was 14, 15 years old during this time. And I was like, damn, wrestling is as real as it gets. Like, you can watch WWE, you can watch wrestling on TV and consume it in a way. But when you go to those ROH shows, it was life-changing as a fan, where it changes your perspective with how close they were hitting each other. Just the absolute, I mean, the word's carnage, man. Like, they would go out there and put their bodies on the line for those three letters ROH. So it's a beautiful thing to see continuing here.
Most definitely, man. And I thought it was really cool tonight. We actually heard like just ROH chants coming from the crowd, which I hadn't heard, or at least hadn't heard big ones. So, yeah, the brand definitely continuing this new era, very strong. And, you know, to echo what Chris Daniels was saying, that he hopes that it achieves the, you know, prestige and level of awareness that it had prior to its downfall and its sale. I think it's well on its way, and hopefully it'll go above and beyond.
Let's get to final handshakes, and let's talk about next week, preview the show that we have, obviously, with Supercard of Honor coming up. Big week for ROH and all of wrestling. All right, next week's show is next Thursday. It's going to be March 30th, 2023. We'll be talking about all the latest news in ROH, the ROH television show, and preview in Supercard of Honor. So we may be going a little bit longer than an hour. We'll figure out the format from now until next week. Any final words, Colton? Get your shit in, talk about the debate. I know you're on this week as a guest, which had to be a little bit different for you.
Yeah, man, I moved over to the bottom left square for the first time in a while. That's, you know, where I got my start. Was the tavern, was coming on as a guest on the debate. Well, actually, you know, first leaving the voicemail on the flagship, but shot my shot and got myself a spot on the debate as a guest. You know, we were really excited to see Tom back this week. OG Figgood, Tom back, being the staple of the turnbuckle debate. I always have a blast with both of the Chads, but I always have a blast with Tom too, man. It was really cool to have, you know, for the first time. And gosh, I mean, I've been filling in for him for about 2 months. So this had to be the first time in 3 months that it was the four of us chatting together. And we had a ball, and we actually had a little bit of a debate on more than one topic. So it was good to have Tom back in there and bringing some heat. Yeah, so I mean, I definitely think I'll we talked, I might be, you know, making some appearances maybe here and there, you know, once every 4 or 5 weeks, but glad to get Tom back in that spot. And it was a lot of fun to just be the guest and get to bring a topic as well. So, but yeah, check it out. That's going to drop on YouTube. This will be Sunday evening at 7, I believe, and then the audio will drop on Monday morning. So check it out, turnbuckletavern.com.
So if you guys are wondering where you can find it, Colton just said it, the turnbuckletavern.com. You guys can check out all these spots here, but make sure you guys like and subscribe. Give us a review on Spotify and Apple. That goes a really long way. Go to Pro Wrestling Tees and pick up some shirts, Teespring. Follow us on Instagram. The Instagram's blowing up. Follow all of us on Instagram. All the personalities on the tavern. Good content coming out every single day of the week, aside from just Saturday. So coming at you strong. So make sure you guys continue to tune in to what we have going for you. And obviously, this is a huge week for all wrestling. We're going to have you covered from start to finish. GCW Collective, we're going to be covering at length on wrestling tonight. We're going to be talking about WrestleMania. We're talking about Supercard of Honor. We're going to talk about the multiverse show with Impact. So make sure you guys are staying tuned for everything we have in store for you. But until next week, guys, make sure you guys abide by the code of honor, and we'll see you next week.